Don't you dare ask us to cancel our plans again. Margaret, my mother snapped through the phone, her voice shrill and sharp as it echoed through the sterile hospital room. I sat there frozen, clutching the phone with trembling hands, unable to comprehend what I'd just heard. It was Christmas Eve at Seattle General Hospital. I was alone, in agonizing pain, while my 2-year-old twins, Lucas and Ava, played quietly on the floor beside me. A nurse named Hannah was checking my vitals, her eyes full of concern. My name is Charlotte Reynolds. I'm 34, a freelance graphic designer, and recently widowed. 6 months ago, my husband Michael was killed in a head-on collision with a drunk driver. Since then, I've been barely hanging on. Now, after collapsing from severe abdominal pain, doctors discovered internal bleeding that required emergency surgery. I had no one else to call. My parents were my last hope. I wasn't asking them to raise my kids. I just needed them to watch their only grandchildren for a few hours while I underwent a life-saving operation. But all they cared about were their Bon Jovi tickets and their Christmas party with my younger sister Grace, the golden child. Their indifference crushed me more than the pain ever could. As I hung up the call with my parents, a crushing silence filled the hospital room. I stared at the blank screen of my phone, blinking through tears I refused to let fall. Hannah, the nurse, gave me a sympathetic glance before quietly stepping out to give me space. My twins, oblivious to the emotional storm around them, continued playing with their toy animals, giggling softly. My chest felt like it was caving in, not just from the physical pain, but from the weight of betrayal. For years, I had believed that family would come through when it mattered. I had supported my parents financially ever since they retired early, sending them $2,500 every month, even when I was barely scraping by after Michael's death. I told myself it was the right thing to do. That's what daughters did. They showed up. But now, when I needed them most, they didn't even hesitate to abandon me. "You're a burden, Charlotte. We deserve to enjoy our lives now," my father had said, as if I were some unwanted debt they were eager to be rid of. I clutched my stomach, wincing as the pain twisted sharper. The doctor said there was internal bleeding. Time wasn't on my side. I had called every friend, every babysitter I knew. No one was available on Christmas Eve. I was out of options. That's when Hannah came back in, gently placing a hand on my shoulder. "My best friend Olivia is a professional nanny," she said softly. "She used to work at the Children's Trauma Center. If you'd like, I can call her." I hesitated only a moment before whispering, "Please." That single word shifted everything. While Hannah stepped out to make the call, I sat back, heart pounding, as emotions surged through me. Fear, grief, but also clarity. I had spent so long trying to earn love that was never freely given. I had been the dutiful daughter, the reliable provider, the one who kept sacrificing, until now. When Olivia arrived less than an hour later, the room seemed to brighten. She knelt down, introduced herself to the twins, and within minutes had both Lucas and Ava smiling and clinging to her legs like old friends. Her warmth, her calm, the way she looked at them, like they were treasures, not burdens, made something in me snap. I asked Hannah, and I missed Hannah for my phone. With trembling fingers, I did two things I had never dared to do. First, I contacted my bank and canceled all future automatic payments to my parents. Then I texted them a message I'd rehearsed 1,000 times in my mind, but never had the courage to send. "I will no longer be providing financial support. My children and I deserve better than being your afterthoughts. Do not contact me again." As the OR team came in to wheel me to surgery, I didn't just feel fear anymore. I felt release. I wasn't just walking into the operating room. I was walking away from decades of emotional manipulation. The surgery was successful, barely. When I woke up in the recovery room, everything was blurry, the lights too bright, and my body weak, as if I had been stitched together with fragile thread. Days passed in a haze. I drifted in and out of sleep, pain and medication dulling the edges of my reality. But through it all, one thing remained constant: Olivia. She was there when I opened my eyes. She stayed in the hospital room during the day, entertaining Lucas and Ava with puppets and storybooks, and took them back to my apartment each night. The nurses whispered about her, calling her a miracle worker. But to me, she was more than that. She was safety. She was compassion in human form. 5 days after surgery, I was alert enough to check my phone. My hands trembled as I unlocked the screen. 27 missed calls, 14 text messages, all from my parents and my sister Grace. I opened the first message from my father. "You can't just cut us off like this. We had to cancel our cruise. Those tickets were non-refundable." I stared at the words, numb. Not one question about my health. Not a single line asking if the twins were okay. Just anger. Just money. My sister's texts were different. "Mom and Dad said you had a routine procedure. What's going on? Why are they freaking out about money?" It hit me like a punch to the gut. My parents had lied to Grace. They hadn't told her I was having emergency surgery. They had spun it into something minor, something I had exaggerated for attention. Still woozy from anesthesia, I typed back the truth. I told her about the internal bleeding, the doctor's warnings, the possibility I might not survive. I told her everything. Her reply came fast. "Oh my God, Charlotte. I had no idea. If I had known, I would have been there. I'm so sorry." For the first time in years, I believed her. Grace wasn't cruel, just sheltered, raised to believe she mattered more. Maybe this would help her see our parents for who they truly were. That night, I made 3 decisions. First, I hired Olivia part-time, using the money I had once sent to my parents. Second, I contacted a lawyer to update my will and appoint a trusted friend, not my family, as legal guardian for the twins, should anything happen to me. Third, I blocked my parents' numbers and limited contact with Grace until I could fully trust her intentions. By the time I returned home, my apartment no longer felt like a prison. It felt like mine. With Olivia's help and Grace slowly re-entering our lives, I was rebuilding not just a routine, but a new foundation. A week later, there was a knock at the door. I checked the peephole. My parents, again, this time with pleading eyes and a single question: "Can we talk?" But I wasn't the same woman they abandoned, and they were about to find that out. I didn't open the door right away. I stood there, heart pounding, staring at their silhouettes through the frosted glass. My father's arms were crossed, his stance stiff with entitlement. My mother clutched her designer handbag like it was a lifeline. I had seen this show before, the guilt trip, the dramatics. I cracked the door just enough to speak. "What do you want?" "Charlotte, sweetheart," my mother began, her voice thick with false concern. "You haven't answered our calls. We were worried." "We're fine," I said, my tone flat. "Now, if that's all—" "It's not," my father interrupted, inching closer. "We need to talk about this financial situation. The bank called. We had to dip into our cruise fund to cover the mortgage." There it was. No mention of my recovery. No question about the kids. Just money. "I told you," I said calmly. "I'm done." "But sweetie," my mother pleaded, her voice rising an octave. "We've come to depend on that money. Your father and I built our lifestyle around your support. My commitment." That word rang in my head like an accusation. I stared at them. "I've been sending you money while grieving a husband, raising 2 toddlers, and barely keeping myself together. And when I needed you for one day, for emergency surgery, you chose Bon Jovi." My father's face tightened. "That's not fair." "You're right," I replied. "It's not fair that I begged for help and got nothing but rejection. It's not fair that I've always been the backup plan while Grace got everything. And it's definitely not fair that I've been guilted into paying for your retirement while sacrificing my own children's security." Just then, Ava toddled into the hallway, clutching her favorite bunny plush. My mother's expression shifted instantly. "There's my little angel," she cooed, crouching down with outstretched arms. Ava stopped, confused, and looked up at me. I shook my head gently. "She doesn't know you. You've seen her 3 times. My mother stood slowly, her eyes filled with tears, but whether they were real or rehearsed, I wasn't sure. "We made one mistake," she whispered. "No," I corrected. You made a pattern. This is the consequence. I shut the door, gently but firmly. And for the first time in my life, I didn't cry afterward. I didn't shake. I felt steady. Later that evening, they came back, this time with my Aunt Denise, always the peacemaker. "Charlotte, be reasonable," she said through the door. "Your parents are struggling. They've managed before. They'll manage again," I replied. "I'm recovering from surgery and raising 2 toddlers. This isn't about being reasonable. It's about survival." That night, I received a group email from my father. It painted me as the ungrateful daughter who abandoned her parents. It left out the surgery, the twins, the betrayal. But something had changed in me. I didn't feel shame. I felt free. The fallout from cutting my parents off came fast and loud. Their emails, texts, and voice messages turned from anger to desperation. They reached out to extended family, twisting the narrative, painting themselves as victims of an ungrateful daughter who had abandoned them in their twilight years. But something incredible happened. People asked for my side. Cousin Marcus replied to the group email, "Didn't you just buy a boat last spring, Uncle Richard?" And Aunt Margaret, "Weren't you showing off a new diamond bracelet at Thanksgiving?" Others chimed in. Some messaged me privately. Many were shocked. And when I told them the truth, that I'd nearly died, that my parents refused to help with the twins during emergency surgery, their support rolled in like a tide I never saw coming. Grace, my sister, became my fiercest ally. After hearing everything firsthand and seeing my parents' behavior up close, she stood firmly by my side. "They lied to me my whole life," she admitted one night over dinner. "Made me believe you were the distant one. I had no idea. It was the beginning of something I'd never imagined. A new life, built not on obligation or guilt, but support, honesty, and choice." Through a support group for young widowed parents that Olivia connected me to, I met Diana, a sharp, kind-hearted real estate agent whose husband had passed from cancer 2 years prior. We bonded instantly. When I told her about my cramped apartment and rising rent, she offered to help me explore options I hadn't dared consider. Selling the apartment I had once shared with Michael was emotional, but Diana helped me see that memories didn't live in walls, they lived in moments, and I could make new ones elsewhere. With the equity from the sale and the money I'd reclaimed from stopping the financial drain to my parents, I found a small but beautiful 3-bedroom home in a quiet, family-friendly neighborhood outside of Portland. The backyard had a tiny garden. The local school had glowing reviews, and for the first time in years, I felt hopeful. The move was a turning point. Neighbors welcomed us with casseroles. A couple from the support group lived 5 blocks away and invited us for weekend play dates. Jessica helped us settle in, bringing over healthy meals and, occasionally, much-needed laughter. Professionally, I found new purpose too. Inspired by the memorial website I had made for Michael, I started offering custom tribute designs for others. It started as a side gig, but quickly gained traction through word of mouth. Clients came not just for a service, but because they knew I understood their grief. I was no longer just surviving, I was rebuilding. And every choice, from cutting ties, to trusting Olivia, to finding the courage to move, led me here. To a life I never thought I could have, surrounded by people who chose to stand by me simply because they cared. 3 months after surgery, my life had changed completely. The constant guilt, emotional manipulation, and pressure to please everyone were gone. In their place was peace, not perfect, but real, built on firm boundaries and self-respect. Lucas and Ava thrived in our new neighborhood, laughing, playing in the dirt, coming home with wild stories only toddlers could invent. I no longer lived under shame or obligation. I learned to say no without guilt. I began choosing joy, even in the smallest ways, like a warm cup of tea or silly dances in the kitchen with my kids. Grace visited often. We began to truly understand each other. No more rivalry, no more distance. "I used to think you were the rebellious one," she said one night. "But now I see, you were just brave enough to live your truth." While I grew stronger, my parents lost everything. They sold their house, downsized, and my father even returned to work. One day, I received a handwritten letter from them, not asking for money, only acknowledging their mistakes. I didn't reply. I didn't need their approval anymore. I was no longer the desperate daughter begging to be loved. I had become a strong, independent mother, the safe place my children could rely on. I hadn't just survived. I had truly come alive. 1 year after the surgery, I sat on the back porch of our new home, watching Lucas and Ava play under the golden afternoon sun. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt true peace. No more chasing approval, no more living to please others. I had rebuilt my life. Not perfect, but finally mine. For so long I believed my worth was tied to sacrifice. But now I understand. Real love doesn't require you to lose yourself. I had become stronger, clearer, and whole. My children were growing up in a home filled with healthy boundaries and unconditional love. Grace was no longer my rival. She had become an ally. Olivia remained a steady presence. And me? I was no longer the daughter begging to be loved. I was the mother who created safety and love from within. When my parents sent a letter apologizing, I didn't feel anger. I didn't rush to forgive. I simply nodded. That was enough. I had broken the cycle. I didn't just survive. I came back to life. This story is no longer written by anyone else. I am the author now. Sometimes, the people we expect to protect us are the ones who hurt us the most, not with fists, but with silence, indifference, and absence. But healing begins the moment we realize we no longer need their approval to define our worth. The true power lies in setting boundaries, in saying enough without guilt, in walking away not with anger, but with peace. We grow when we stop waiting to be chosen and start choosing ourselves. This story reminds us that love is not measured by blood, but by action. The people who stand beside you in your darkest moments, those are your real family. Rebuilding your life doesn't mean forgetting the pain, but transforming it into strength, clarity, and courage. Your past may shape you, but it does not own you. You are allowed to break free, rebuild, and become someone entirely new, someone you can be proud of. If you're stuck in a cycle of toxic family dynamics or feel guilty for setting boundaries, know this: choosing yourself is not selfish, it's survival. Start small. Reflect on who drains your energy versus who restores it. Be honest about your needs. And most importantly, remember that family doesn't have to mean shared DNA. It can mean shared values, love, and respect. Seek out community, support groups, friends, mentors. They can help fill the space once occupied by pain. Healing isn't linear, but every boundary you set and every step you take toward peace is a victory. You are not alone, and you don't need permission to live a life that feels safe, joyful, and free. If you enjoy deep, emotional, and meaningful stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new update. Your support is the motivation that drives us to keep bringing you powerful stories. Once again, thank you for being here, and see you in the next story.